What if I told you that the snack you've been enjoying every single night for the past 20, 30, maybe even 40 years is the very thing stealing your sleep? And here's what makes this even more frustrating. For decades, doctors, nutritionists, even sleep experts have been telling you this food is perfectly fine. Some have even recommended it as a healthy evening choice. But a groundbreaking study published just last year in the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine is forcing us to completely rethink everything we believed about nighttime eating and sleep quality in adults over 60. I'm Dr. Evelyn Moore, and after 32 years of treating patients with sleep disorders, I can tell you that this single discovery has transformed how I approach insomnia in my senior patients. The results have been nothing short of remarkable. But before I reveal exactly what this food is and why it's been silently sabotaging your rest for years, you need to understand something crucial about how your sleep chemistry has changed since you turned 50. Because without this piece of the puzzle, you won't fully grasp why this seemingly innocent food is causing you to wake up at 3 in the morning, stare at the ceiling for hours, and feel exhausted before your day even begins. And to explain this, I need to tell you about Margaret. Margaret walked into my office on a Tuesday afternoon, and I could see the exhaustion written across her face before she even sat down. She was 73 years old, a retired school teacher who had spent her whole life waking up at 5:30 in the morning with energy to spare. But for the past 2 years, something had changed. She told me, "Dr. Moore, I don't understand what's happening to me. I go to bed tired. I fall asleep just fine. But somewhere around 2 or 3 in the morning, my eyes pop open, and that's it. I'm awake. My mind starts racing. I toss and turn. Sometimes I don't fall back asleep until an hour before my alarm goes off. I'm exhausted all day, every day, and I've tried everything." I asked her what she meant by everything. She listed off melatonin supplements, chamomile tea, white noise machines, blackout curtains. She'd even tried sleeping in a separate room from her husband, thinking maybe his snoring was the problem. Nothing worked. I pulled out my notepad and asked her to walk me through a typical evening. She said she usually had dinner around 6, something light, maybe soup or a salad. Then around 8 o'clock, she and her husband would settle in to watch their shows, and she'd have her evening snack. I asked her what that snack typically looked like. She smiled and said, "Oh, the same thing I've had for years, a nice plate of cheese and crackers. Sometimes I'll add some sliced salami or prosciutto. My husband and I discovered it when we traveled years ago, and it became our little ritual. We've been doing it every night for probably 25 years now." I leaned back in my chair because I had heard this exact story dozens of times before. Margaret had no idea that her beloved evening ritual was the very thing destroying her sleep. I said to her, "Margaret, I think I know exactly what's causing your insomnia. And I'm almost certain that if you make one change to your evening routine, you'll be sleeping through the night within 2 weeks." She looked at me with a mixture of hope and skepticism. After all, she'd been to 3 other doctors who had prescribed sleeping pills, suggested cognitive behavioral therapy, and told her that sleep simply gets worse with age and she should accept it. None of them had asked her about cheese. What happened next changed Margaret's life. But to understand why this worked and why I'm so confident it will work for you too, we need to talk about a compound that most people have never heard of. A compound that becomes increasingly problematic as we age. And this is exactly what the new research has uncovered. Now, before I go any further, I want to hear from you. Have you been experiencing that frustrating pattern of waking up in the middle of the night and not being able to fall back asleep? If that sounds familiar, drop a comment below and tell me what time you usually wake up. Is it 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4? I read every single comment, and I think you'll be surprised to see how many people share the exact same experience. There's a reason for that, and we're about to uncover it together. Let me explain something that most people, including many doctors, don't fully appreciate. Your brain chemistry at age 65 is dramatically different from your brain chemistry at age 35. This isn't just about having fewer brain cells or slower processing. This is about specific changes to the neurotransmitters that regulate your sleep-wake cycle. Think of your brain like a finely tuned thermostat. When you were younger, this thermostat could handle fluctuations easily. If your brain got a little too much stimulation, it could quickly rebalance. But as we age, this thermostat becomes more sensitive, more reactive, and much less forgiving. One of the key players in this system is a neurotransmitter called norepinephrine. You can think of norepinephrine as your brain's alarm system. When norepinephrine levels rise, you become more alert, more vigilant, more awake. This is incredibly useful during the day when you need to focus, respond to your environment, and stay sharp. But at night, norepinephrine is supposed to drop to very low levels, allowing your brain to transition into deep, restorative sleep. Here's the problem. Research published in the journal Neurobiology of Aging has shown that as we get older, our brains become much more sensitive to anything that triggers norepinephrine release. It's like that thermostat I mentioned earlier has become hypersensitive. A small trigger that wouldn't have affected your sleep at 40 can now completely disrupt it at 65 or 70. And this brings us to the food I've been talking about. There's a compound found in certain foods called tyramine. Tyramine is an amino acid that occurs naturally when protein-rich foods age or ferment. And here's what tyramine does in your body. It triggers the release of norepinephrine, that same alertness chemical that's supposed to be quiet at night. When you eat tyramine-rich foods in the evening, you're essentially pressing your brain's alarm button right before bed. At 30, your brain might be able to handle this. The effects would be minimal, maybe not even noticeable. But at 65, that same amount of tyramine can cause norepinephrine to surge in the middle of the night, snapping you awake and keeping you awake for hours. Now here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the part that the medical community has been missing for decades. The foods highest in tyramine are the exact foods that many seniors consider perfectly healthy evening snacks. I'm talking about aged cheeses, cheddar, blue cheese, Parmesan, brie, camembert, Gouda that's been aged for months. I'm talking about cured and processed meats, salami, pepperoni, prosciutto, bacon, even some deli meats. I'm talking about fermented foods that have become trendy health foods. Certain sauerkrauts, kimchi, some pickled vegetables. And here's the painful irony. Many of these foods have been promoted as heart-healthy or protein-rich options for seniors. Mediterranean diet recommendations often emphasize aged cheeses and cured meats. Nobody was thinking about what these foods do to your sleep when eaten late at night. Let me give you an analogy that will make this crystal clear. Imagine your brain at night is like a sleeping baby. During the day, that baby is awake, active, responsive to everything. But at night, you need that baby to sleep peacefully. Now imagine that every night around 8 or 9 p.m., someone sneaks into the nursery and blows a whistle. Not a loud whistle, just enough to make the baby stir. The baby might not wake up immediately, but a few hours later, when sleep naturally gets lighter around 2 or 3 a.m., that earlier disturbance is enough to make the baby wake up completely. That whistle is the tyramine in your cheese and cured meats. It's not enough to prevent you from falling asleep initially, but it sets off a delayed reaction that hits you in the middle of the night when your sleep is most vulnerable. The study I mentioned at the beginning of this video looked at over 1,200 adults between the ages of 60 and 80 who complained of middle-of-the-night awakenings. Researchers tracked their dietary intake for 6 months and correlated it with their sleep patterns using actigraphy, which are those wristband devices that monitor sleep objectively. What they found was striking. Participants who regularly consumed high tyramine foods within 4 hours of bedtime were nearly 3 times more likely to experience nighttime awakenings compared to those who avoided these foods in the evening. 3 times more likely. But here's what made this study truly groundbreaking. When the researchers had participants eliminate high tyramine foods from their evening meals for just 3 weeks, 71% reported significant improvement in their sleep continuity. They weren't waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. anymore, and they weren't using any sleeping pills or supplements to achieve this. Now I promised I would tell you the specific foods to avoid, and I'm going to give you that complete list. But I also want to give you something more practical, because I know that simply taking away your favorite evening snack without offering alternatives would be frustrating and unsustainable. First, let me tell you the biggest offenders when it comes to tyramine. Aged cheeses are at the top of the list. The longer a cheese has been aged, the more tyramine it contains. Blue cheese, aged cheddar, Parmesan, Camembert, and Brie are particularly high. Some of these cheeses contain 10 to 20 times more tyramine than fresh cheeses. Cured, smoked, and processed meats are next. This includes salami, pepperoni, prosciutto, bacon, smoked fish, and even some hot dogs and deli meats. The curing process creates tyramine, and the longer the meat has been cured, the higher the levels. Fermented foods, while often promoted for gut health, can be problematic for evening consumption. This includes aged sauerkraut, kimchi, miso, and certain soy products like tempeh. Soy sauce is also high in tyramine, which is worth knowing if you enjoy Asian cuisine for dinner. Certain alcoholic beverages, particularly red wine and beer, contain significant tyramine. This is one of the reasons why that glass of wine with dinner might be affecting your sleep more than you realized. Overripe fruits, particularly bananas, avocados, and figs that have become very ripe, develop higher tyramine levels. And finally, certain bean products, especially fava beans and broad beans, contain tyramine. Now let me tell you what happened with Margaret after our conversation. I asked her to do one thing and one thing only. I said, stop having aged cheese and cured meats after 4 p.m. She could still enjoy them, but only earlier in the day when her brain had time to process the tyramine before bed. For her evening snack, I suggested alternatives that are naturally low in tyramine. Fresh cheeses like cottage cheese, ricotta, or cream cheese. Fresh mozzarella is also typically fine because it hasn't been aged. Mild cheeses like American cheese, while not gourmet, are actually low in tyramine. Fresh cooked meats like chicken or turkey breast, crackers with almond butter or hummus, fresh fruits that aren't overripe, Greek yogurt with a little honey. Margaret was skeptical, but she was also desperate. She agreed to try it for 2 weeks. She called my office on day 11. I'll never forget what she said to me. She said, "Dr. Moore, I slept through the night. For the first time in 2 years, I slept from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. without waking up once. And then I did it again the next night. And the night after that. I thought something was wrong with me because I couldn't remember the last time I felt this rested. This wasn't a miracle. This wasn't a placebo effect. This was simple biochemistry. By removing the tyramine trigger from her evenings, Margaret's brain could finally maintain the low norepinephrine levels necessary for uninterrupted sleep. I have to share a few more stories with you because Margaret's case, while remarkable, isn't unique. Let me tell you about Robert, who was 68 and had convinced himself that he was just a light sleeper. That was his identity. He'd tell everyone, "I've always been a light sleeper. It's just who I am." But when I dug into his history, I discovered that this so-called lifelong pattern had actually started when he retired 7 years earlier. What changed at retirement? He started a nightly tradition of enjoying a cheese board while reading before bed. It felt sophisticated, relaxing, a reward for a life well worked. He had no idea that his reward was costing him hours of quality sleep every single night. After switching to fresh cheeses and eliminating cured meats from his evenings, Robert experienced something he described as life-changing. He said, "I'm not a light sleeper. I never was. I was poisoning my sleep without knowing it." Within 3 weeks, Robert was sleeping 6 to 7 hours continuously, something he hadn't done since his 50s. Then there was Dorothy, 76, whose situation was a bit different. She didn't eat cheese plates, but she had a habit of having a bowl of strong miso soup in the evenings because she'd read it was good for digestion. The fermented soy was loading her system with tyramine just a few hours before bed. Dorothy also loved banana bread, and her daughter would bring her a fresh loaf every week. Dorothy would have a slice or two in the evening with her tea. Overripe bananas and banana bread combined with the miso soup created a double tyramine hit every night. Once Dorothy understood the connection and made substitutions, choosing fresh vegetables with a light broth instead of miso, and having her banana bread earlier in the day, her sleep transformed. She went from waking up 2 to 3 times per night to sleeping through until morning. And I want to mention James, who at 81 had basically given up on sleep. He told me he'd accepted that old people don't sleep well, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. James was taking 2 different prescription sleep medications, and he was still waking up multiple times per night. When I asked about his diet, he mentioned that he and his wife ate dinner at the early bird special time, around 4:30 p.m., because of medication timing. But then by 9 p.m., they'd both be hungry again, so they'd have what he called a little nosh. That little nosh was typically crackers with aged cheddar and some sliced pepperoni from the deli. When James eliminated this late-night snack and replaced it with a small portion of cottage cheese with fresh peaches, something remarkable happened. For the first time in years, he was able to reduce his sleep medication, working with his doctor, of course, and he actually slept better on less medication. His brain wasn't fighting against the tyramine-induced norepinephrine surges anymore. I want to take a moment and ask you another question, and I really hope you'll engage with this one because your answer might help others watching this video. After hearing these stories, have you identified something in your own evening routine that might be contributing to your sleep problems? Maybe it's not cheese, maybe it's that glass of red wine, or the fermented pickles you love, or the aged salami on your pizza nights. Whatever it is, comment below and tell me what you're planning to change. Sometimes just writing it down makes it real and helps you commit to the experiment. Now, let me give you a clear, actionable protocol so you can start implementing this tonight. This isn't complicated, but you need to follow it consistently for at least 2 weeks to see results. Step 1 is to conduct a kitchen audit. Go through your refrigerator and pantry right now or pause this video and do it after, and identify all high tyramine foods. I'm talking about aged cheeses, cured meats, fermented vegetables, soy sauce, and red wine. You don't have to throw them away. You just need to know what they are. Step 2 is to establish a tyramine cutoff time. Any high tyramine food should be consumed before 4 p.m. at the latest. This gives your body roughly 8 hours to process the tyramine before your typical bedtime. If you're someone who goes to bed earlier, adjust accordingly. The key is a minimum of 6 hours between high tyramine foods and sleep. Step 3 is to create your new evening snack menu. Write this down somewhere visible. Your sleep-friendly evening options include fresh cheeses like cottage cheese, ricotta, fresh mozzarella, and cream cheese. Fresh cooked proteins like chicken breast, turkey, or fish that hasn't been smoked. Fresh fruits that aren't overripe. Fresh vegetables with hummus or guacamole made from fresh avocado, not overripe. Crackers or toast with almond butter, peanut butter, or a light spread of honey. Greek yogurt or regular yogurt, a small bowl of cereal with milk, popcorn with light seasoning but not heavy cheese powder. Step 4 is to keep a simple sleep diary for 2 weeks. Every morning, write down what time you went to bed, what time you fell asleep approximately, whether you woke up during the night and what times, and what you ate in the evening. This diary will help you see patterns and confirm whether the dietary changes are making a difference. Step 5 is to talk to your doctor if you're currently taking any sleep medications or have other health conditions. The changes I'm suggesting are dietary, not medical, but it's always wise to keep your healthcare provider informed, especially if you experience significant improvements and want to discuss medication adjustments. Let me address a few questions that I know are probably running through your mind right now. First, does this mean you can never eat cheese again? Absolutely not. You can enjoy aged cheese, cured meats, and all these wonderful foods. The key is timing. Have your cheese board at lunch instead of before bed. Enjoy that glass of wine with an early dinner. You're not eliminating these foods from your life. You're just relocating them to earlier in your day. Second, how long does it take to see results? Most of my patients notice a difference within 3 to 7 days. Some notice it even sooner. However, I recommend committing to this protocol for a full 2 weeks before evaluating whether it's working for you. Sleep patterns can fluctuate for various reasons, and 2 weeks gives you enough data to see a clear trend. Third, what if you try this and your sleep doesn't improve? If you've been consistent with eliminating evening tyramine for 2 weeks and see no improvement, there may be other factors contributing to your sleep difficulties. This could include sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, medications you're taking, anxiety or depression, or other medical conditions. In that case, I would encourage you to see a sleep specialist for a comprehensive evaluation. But based on the research and my clinical experience, I would estimate that at least half of seniors who struggle with nighttime awakenings will see meaningful improvement from this one dietary change alone. Fourth, are there any foods that actually help sleep? Yes, there are. Foods containing tryptophan, which is a precursor to serotonin and melatonin, can actually support sleep. This includes turkey, chicken, eggs, nuts, especially almonds and walnuts, seeds, and dairy products that are fresh rather than aged. Complex carbohydrates can also help because they assist with tryptophan absorption. This is why a small snack combining protein and complex carbs, like whole grain crackers with fresh cheese, can actually support sleep rather than disrupt it. Fifth, what about other dietary factors that affect sleep? Caffeine is an obvious one, and I recommend no caffeine after noon for anyone over 60. Spicy foods can disrupt sleep by raising body temperature and potentially causing acid reflux. Large meals close to bedtime can also interfere with sleep quality. And while we focused on tyramine today, it's worth noting that some people are sensitive to MSG, which can have stimulant effects in certain individuals. I want to leave you with this thought: sleep is not a luxury. It is a biological necessity that becomes even more critical as we age. Poor sleep increases your risk of cognitive decline, heart disease, diabetes, falls, and depression. It weakens your immune system and slows your body's ability to heal. When we sacrifice sleep quality, we sacrifice quality of life. The tragedy is that so many seniors have accepted poor sleep as an inevitable part of aging. I've had patients tell me, "I'm 75, what do you expect?" I expect better. I expect that you deserve answers, not dismissal. I expect that there are solutions that don't involve more pills with more side effects. And I expect that something as simple as rethinking your evening snack could be the key that unlocks better sleep, better energy, better mood, and better health. Margaret, Robert, Dorothy, James, and hundreds of other patients have proven that this works. The science supports it. The results speak for themselves. The question now is whether you're willing to try it. This information has the potential to help not just you, but your spouse, your siblings, your friends, anyone over 60 who's struggling with sleep. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button. It really helps more people find this content who need it. If you're not already subscribed to this channel, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss future videos where I'll be sharing more evidence-based strategies for healthy aging. And please, share this video with someone you care about who might be struggling with sleep. Send it to your sister who complains about waking up at 3 a.m. Share it with your neighbor who always looks exhausted. Post it in your community group. You could literally change someone's quality of life by sharing this information. I'm Dr. Evelyn Moore, and I believe that everyone deserves to sleep well, regardless of age. In my next video, I'll be talking about a specific breathing technique that has been shown in research to help seniors fall asleep faster. It takes just 4 minutes before bed, and it works by activating your parasympathetic nervous system in a very specific way. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Until then, remember that small changes can lead to profound improvements in how you feel every single day. Sleep well, my friends, and as always, please consult with your own healthcare provider before making any significant changes to your diet or health routine. This information is meant to educate and empower, not to replace personalized medical advice. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next one.